Welcome back. It is that time. Fantasy football season is upon us. Draft season is very close, and some of you probably have drafted already. I had my first draft the other day. Me and the girlfriend share a team, so the team came out pretty well. I liked it. We got some guys on this list that I have for you guys for potential league winners in 2022. You guys know I make my fantasy videos every year in August. I would love to do it year round, but there's so much great competition out there. I don't have the time, but it would be cool to do fantasy like every week, but I just can't do it. Anyway, hope you guys enjoyed the video. Leave in the comments who are your breakout players, league winners for the 2022 fantasy football season, and let's get into it. We start off the list with Cowboys wide receiver CeeDee Lamb. His average draft position is number 19 overall. He was the wide receiver 14 last year, and Lamb was a guy that I definitely liked last year, but now looking at his situation this year, and I think I like him even more. Now, he had a decent season last year. I would say it's a pretty good season, 79 catches, 1,100 yards, 6 touchdowns, but I think in the touchdown department and even reception department, we were expecting a bit more, and he definitely had some inconsistencies. Lamb had a pretty inconsistent second half, but here's why I like him in 2022. So Amari Cooper is gone, as we know, went to the Cleveland Browns. Michael Gallup may also miss some time, so now it's just down to CeeDee Lamb and Dalton Schultz are like the only proven receivers on that team. There are 165 vacated targets from Amari Cooper and Cedric Wilson. So those guys leave. Somebody else has to take those targets, and CeeDee Lamb should definitely see a bump in his target share. So I think CeeDee Lamb has a chance to see the highest target share of any wide receiver in football this year. And fantasy football is a lot about volume. It's not always about talent. It's not like watching a real football game. It's about getting targets and volume and carries and stuff like that, passing attempts for quarterbacks. And I think CeeDee Lamb could be in a situation where he sees the most targets in football this year. He had a 20.4% target share last year. That was 36th in the NFL. Definitely could be better. But I could see it being 25% or more this upcoming season. He might even get to 28, 29%. Like, he might be very high up there in the Cowboys' target share this season. He has a good quarterback in Dak Prescott. And CeeDee Lamb has some big plays. He was top 10 in 20-plus yard catches last year. We all remember that play he had against the Patriots in New England, the walk-off touchdown. That was like a 60-yarder. He's been durable. He's only missed one game in his 2 NFL seasons, and Dallas was top 5 in pass attempts in 2021. They might lean on the run a bit more this year with Cooper gone and, Zeke being back to full strength, and Tony Pollard, of course, is there, but still, I mean, this team's going to pass the ball, and they'll probably be top 10 in pass attempts, and if that's the case, I could see CeeDee Lamb getting so much work here. Now, Michael Gallup could come back at some point, and he probably will come back at some point, eat into that target share, but at least to start the year, I think CeeDee Lamb is a safe bet to see a ton of targets. Next, we stay in the NFC East, and no, this is not Giants fan bias, but I feel very good about Saquon Barkley in this 2022 season. Saquon's being drafted as the RB13 right now on fantasyfootballcalculator.com. He was the RB33 last year, battled some injuries, and was not as good in the second half, and had a slow start to the year coming off the ACL injury. And his average draft position overall this year is number 21 overall. Now, Barkley's only played in 15 games the past 2 years. That is not ideal, but in 2018, I know this is going back 4 seasons, but he was the RB2 in half PPR. He's that good when he's healthy. I'm not saying he'll be the RB2 this year, but I think he'll definitely outperform RB13. The Giants' offensive line added some pieces, including Mark Lewinsky at right guard, Evan Neal at right tackle. That will definitely help him. Now, this Brian Daboll offense is what excites me about Saquon Barkley. We have seen it in the 1 or 2 drives he played in the preseason, in the first preseason game versus the Patriots. He ran an angle route about 5 yards away from the end zone, and Daniel Jones didn't see him. He threw a good pass to Kenny Golladay that was dropped, but Saquon Barkley was pretty much open for a receiving touchdown in that game, and that probably would have boosted his draft stock even more, but luckily Daniel Jones did not look his way. So you might be getting a bit of a discount on Saquon Barkley here, but the point is, he is running a lot more routes in this Brian Daboll scheme. The Giants will use him as a pass catcher, and there is no competition behind him. Matt Breida, the backup running back, has not played yet in preseason. He's injured, and the guys behind Matt Breida are names you probably won't recognize. Barkley is a supreme athlete when healthy. Go back and watch his highlights when he's healthy. He's one of the most talented running backs in all of football. He had 18 and 27 points in 2 games last year before getting the ankle injury. It seemed like Barkley was really coming into his own. Coming back from the ACL, they worked him in slowly. He had that blow-up game versus the Saints. He had the 27 fantasy points, and then he turned his ankle in that game versus the Cowboys. His ankle swelled up. It did not look good. But Saquon has top 5 running back upside, in my opinion. I would take him over guys like Joe Mixon. I would take him over DeAndre Swift, Najee Harris, Nick Chubb, guys like that. I would take Saquon over those guys, honestly. It's a contract year for him. He definitely wants that big payday, and he's still just 25 years old. So Barkley being the supreme athlete he is, the new play caller coming in, I'm excited for Saquon's outlook in 2022. Number 3 on my list is going to be Tyreek Hill of the Miami Dolphins. His ADP is number 22 overall. He was the wide receiver 6 last year. It doesn't matter as much because it's a new team for him. So he was acquired by this Mike McDaniel regime. They came in, made a big splash, and that says a lot. When the coach and the play caller come in and say, I want that guy for my offense, and they get him, they're going to use him. There are concerns of like, Tua is not the same guy as Patrick Mahomes. We get all that. But they are going to manufacture targets to Tyreek Hill's way. Miami gave up 5 draft picks, including a first rounder and a second rounder just to get him. Then they gave him a 4-year, $120 million contract that made him the highest paid wide receiver in NFL history. And I like Mike McDaniel. I definitely trust in this guy's offense. We have not really seen it yet in the regular season, but this guy, he has learned under some great coaches, and he knows how to get the ball in his playmakers' hands, and that's what he'll do with Tyreek Hill. Now, I'm not saying these guys are the same type of player, but I can absolutely see a world where the Dolphins use Tyreek Hill the same way the Niners tried to use Deebo Samuel. Not to that extent, because Deebo is a type of guy that will run you over. Tyreek's not that same way, but they will get the ball in Tyreek Hill's hands, plenty of targets behind the line of scrimmage, some rushing attempts and things like that. And last year, Tyreek Hill was tied for 7th most in targets behind the line of scrimmage. That's an area where I think he could see even more than last year, which is crazy. But Tyreek's going to get the rock, whether it's crossing routes, drag routes, screen passes, running plays, in the flat, slants. It doesn't matter. They will get the ball in Tyreek Hill's hands, trust me. I think he has a safe floor with just the volume alone, but if Tua Tagovailoa takes another step and actually passes the ball well downfield, then my goodness, Tyreek Hill might be a top 5 wide receiver. He's still just 28 years old. He has good durability in his history, and he has week winning upside on any given week. That's nice to have, of course. So Tyreek Hill, going somewhere in the middle of the second round, late second round, I love taking him there. If you get him in the third round, even better. But yeah, I'm all in on Tyreek Hill this year. Next, we have a tight end, Mark Andrews of the Baltimore Ravens. He finished as the tight end 1 last year over Travis Kelce. He actually beat him by like 30 points. So yes, Mark Andrews had a great year last year. His ADP is number 27 overall right now. He's still going behind Travis Kelce, which I don't get. I know it's like a name thing. Oh, Travis Kelce's been a stud for years, but like Mark Andrews, I feel like is the better option for this season, in my opinion. So the departure of Marquise Brown, that's 146 targets off this Ravens team, and they didn't really add anybody of note. It's not like they went out there and got another wide receiver to replace Marquise Brown. They're hoping that Rashad Bateman takes a step forward, but their biggest offseason acquisition at wide receiver was like DeMarcus Robinson. Like, that's not going to scare me away from Mark Andrews. The Ravens running backs are already hurt. We know about J.K. Dobbins coming back. They might work him in slowly. Gus Edwards is pretty much doubtful for week 1 at this point, so that may lead to more passing attempts. And Mark Andrews had 4 weeks last year of over 22 fantasy points in 2021. So this guy has week winning ability at the tight end position. You love to have that. There are guys like your TJ Hawkinsons or maybe like a Cole Kmet, Zach Ertz, that are going to be like your safe floor guys, your 4 catches for 40 yards every week, and you'll take your 8 points and be happy. But still, a guy like Mark Andrews can go out there and score 25, 30 points any week and pretty much win you a matchup. And think about the competitive advantage you have at tight end if you have Mark Andrews. You're going to have the best tight end in football, and most of your opponents are not going to have guys in that area. Sure, there's guys like George Kittle that can pop off and Kyle Pitts, but for the most part, I would say like 3/4 of your league is not going to be able to compete with the tight end you have in Mark Andrews. So there's a competitive advantage right there. Andrews had 20 red zone targets. That was 12th in the NFL last year. We know Lamar Jackson loves to look his way, and he has played 14 games or more every season in his 4-year NFL career. So I think Andrews is safe. I think his ceiling's super high. He might score more touchdowns than last year. So while he did have 107 catches, over 1,300 yards, it was only 9 touchdowns. 9 touchdowns is a good season, but with 1,300 yards, you might see Mark Andrews get 12 to 15 touchdowns this year. And then, my goodness, he is like by far the tight end one. So I love taking Mark Andrews, especially in round 3. Next, we have a guy whose name I ironically just said like a minute ago, but Marquise Brown of the Arizona Cardinals now. His ADP is number 73 overall. It's a great discount. He was the wide receiver 22 last year. Now, sometimes you have to think about what did the team give up to get this guy, how much they paid him, where they draft him. And for Marquise Brown, the Cardinals gave up a middle of the first round pick to get Marquise Brown. Now, I'm sure most of you know, you can tell by the picture, he played college ball at Oklahoma with Kyler Murray. There was a built-in connection, chemistry with those two guys. You love seeing that. Marquise Brown was 8th in air yards in 2021. If you want to have big plays at wide receiver, Marquise Brown is that guy. And with Marquise Brown excelling at big plays, look at Kyler Murray as a deep ball passer. He's excellent. He was rated number 1 by Pro Football Focus in deep passing with a 99.3 grade. That is almost perfect. That is awesome. Kyler Murray's deep ball is pretty, and while Kyler may have trouble seeing over the line at his height, he can still throw a great deep ball. That's all we care about. There is no DeAndre Hopkins the first 6 games. He's been the leading target guy for the Cardinals the past couple years. He's out the picture for basically a third of the season, pretty much half of the fantasy regular season. And Marquise Brown has played 14 plus games in each of his 4 seasons in the NFL, so definitely no injury history there. And he has something to prove. He's the one that wanted to get out of Baltimore. He wanted a better situation for himself. He has something to prove now. And the Cardinals did not give him a contract extension. He's pretty much playing for a contract, so you love seeing that as well. And through the first 9 weeks last year, weeks 1 through 9, he was the wide receiver 5. People forget how good Marquise Brown was over the first half or even more of last season. So we have seen stretches of him being a very good wide receiver, very consistent. Look, he's going to give you some weeks where it's only 6 points or 5 points, but he will have those weeks where it's 18 points, 24, 27. Marquise Brown has those blow-up games. We know that. I love the connection with him and Kyler Murray, and even the suspension to DeAndre Hopkins makes him even more attractive this year. Number 6, we have Courtland Sutton, wide receiver of the Denver Broncos. His ADP is number 71 overall. He's the 29th wide receiver being drafted right now on Fantasy Football Calculator. That's a wide receiver 3. Now, Russell Wilson, who now plays quarterback for the Broncos, he has had a top 15 wide receiver on his team every year since 2015. That is Seattle, but still, Russell Wilson always has a good wide receiver on his team. Tyler Lockett was the wide receiver 15 in 2018. That was the lowest they have had since 2015, and Seattle has historically been a run-heavy team. So what this tells you is that if Russell Wilson's the quarterback, they're going to have a wide receiver in Denver that is like a top 15 guy. That could be Jerry Jeudy, but my pick is Courtland Sutton. I just like him more. Sutton had over 1,100 yards in 2019 with Joe Flacco, Drew Lock, and Brandon Allen as his quarterbacks. He is now 2 years removed from the ACL injury. He did play all 17 games last year. It wasn't the best production. The quarterback situation in Denver sucked with Teddy Bridgewater and Drew Lock. But now 2 years off that injury, he will be able to trust his knee even more. You know, people say like, oh, it was hard to trust my knee the first year coming back. It usually takes 2 years to be fully recovered from those injuries, and now he's in year 2. So that's great news coming off the injury. It reminds me a lot of when Peyton Manning went to the Broncos, not saying Peyton Manning and Russell Wilson are the same guys, but they're both elite quarterbacks. And you think back to Eric Decker and Demaryius Thomas. Rest in peace, Demaryius. But Eric Decker went from wide receiver 35 to wide receiver 12 when Peyton Manning got there, and Demaryius Thomas went from wide receiver 57 to wide receiver 6. I think Thomas missed some time the year prior with Tim Tebow, but going from 57 to 6 is insane. And Russell Wilson can have a similar impact to these guys. It's always great to buy low on wide receivers where the quarterback going out was bad, which is Teddy Bridgewater. I'm not saying he's like horrible, but Teddy Bridgewater is Teddy Bridgewater. And the incoming quarterback is elite and very good. We saw the same crap last year with Cooper Kupp. Not saying he'll put up Cooper Kupp type numbers, but you saw Jared Goff to Matthew Stafford. Oh my God, Cooper Kupp's wide receiver 1. So my point is going from Teddy Bridgewater and Drew Lock to Russell Wilson is very good for any Broncos wide receiver, and especially Courtland Sutton. In 2021, Sutton was second in the NFL in intended air yards per target, only trailing Marquez Valdes-Scantling. So despite him not really cashing in on those deep ball opportunities, Courtland Sutton saw plenty of air yards, and if he capitalizes on them this year, he will have a great season. Russell Wilson is a good deep ball thrower, so they will connect more times than not this year, and I think Courtland Sutton is going to be a great value this season. Next at number 7, we have Trey Lance. If you're making a fantasy football league winners type video or an article or just talking to your friends and you don't bring up Trey Lance, you're just not doing it right. That's all I can say. Trey Lance has the potential to be a league winner in fantasy football this season. Its average draft position is number 93 right now, and I don't really get get it. He's going behind guys like Matthew Stafford and even Tom Brady, which, Tom Brady's great, but like in fantasy football, I will take Trey Lance any day of the week. This just feels like Jalen Hurts from last year, honestly. Jalen Hurts was a really good quarterback in fantasy football last year. I believe Hurts was the quarterback 6. But the difference is Trey Lance is more talented and has a better team around him and honestly a better play caller. Sirianni was good as a rookie head coach, but Kyle Shanahan's great. So being drafted as the quarterback 13, once again, behind guys like Matthew Stafford, Tom Brady, Dak Prescott, it makes no sense to me. Lance had 3 games last year where he played majority of the snaps at quarterback, and these were his point totals in those 3 games. He had a 20.4 point performance, a 15.6, and a 20.1 point performance. Now, the 15.6 was literally an inch away from being 6 more points. It would have been 21.6, but some guy in the Cardinals made an insane goal line stand against Trey Lance. But still, he would have had over 20 fantasy points in each of those 3 starts. That's as a rookie, as a raw prospect coming out of North Dakota State. And in my opinion, Lance is a safe bet to rush over 500 yards this year. We know how much more valuable rushing yards are than passing yards in fantasy. In most leagues, it takes 25 passing yards to equal 1 fantasy point, but 10 rushing yards to equal 1 fantasy point. So it's 15 less yards. So anytime you can get your hands on a rushing quarterback in fantasy, it's a game changer. Like Trey Lance can literally be an average passer, but if he runs the way we expect him to and scores some goal line touchdowns like I expect him to, he's going to be great for the quarterback position. I will say it now. I think Trey Lance is going to be a top 5 fantasy quarterback this year, barring injury. Of course, that could happen, but barring injury, I think Trey Lance is going to be a top 5 quarterback in fantasy football. Next, we have Vikings wide receiver Adam Thielen. So I don't know if Thielen's considered a league winner, but I like this guy a lot this year, so I had to put him on here. And yes, I was a little hesitant putting the 32-year-old version of Adam Thielen on this list, but here's a stat and a little nugget about Adam Thielen. He has missed 5 games over the past 2 years, but still has 24 receiving touchdowns in that time. That is only less than 2 guys in the NFL, Mike Evans and Devontae Adams. And those guys are pretty good at football. Justin Jefferson, week in and week out, is always going to see top coverage. Adam Thielen's life will be easier. And Kirk Cousins loves looking the way of Adam Thielen once they get down to the red zone. It just always happens. Thielen had 14 touchdowns in 2020, and last year he still had 10 despite missing 4 games. And when you're looking for a guy that will separate himself from the pack and really outperform his average draft position, a lot of times touchdowns will do that, and a guy that can score a lot of touchdowns is Adam Thielen. Now, he had an ankle sprain last year, he had a hamstring issue back in 2019, but outside of that, he has been durable. Minnesota should be and could be top 5 in passing attempts this year. Their new head coach, Kevin O'Connell, coming over from the Rams, has really hyped up the passing game of this team. I actually even like Kirk Cousins a lot this year, not saying he'll be a league winner, I would never say that, but Kirk Cousins might low-key have 35 passing touchdowns this year. He might have a good season. So sure, you are banking on some touchdown upside. It's not always great to bet on that, but we have seen the Kirk Cousins and Adam Thielen duo do it twice now, and sure, maybe KJ Osborne outplays Adam Thielen and Adam Thielen becomes the wide receiver 3. That would not be good. But if Adam Thielen catches 10 plus touchdowns for the 3rd year in a row, you're going to see a positive return on your investment. I think a realistic season for Thielen is 80 catches, around 1,000 yards, and 10 touchdowns. That's very possible. That would definitely put him in the wide receiver 2 conversation. So yeah, I know his best days might be behind him technically. Thielen was a stud 4 or 5 years ago, but he might be a guy to catch double-digit touchdowns. You can get him in the 7th round. So to me, it's worth the risk. So anyway, that will do it for this fantasy football video. We have 3 more videos coming out. Bold predictions. We have the Sleepers and Values show and then the Do Not Draft show. I will try to get those out very soon within the next week. Hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I'll talk to you guys next time.